We're going to hear more about this in one of our last presentations for the semester. In the New Age movement, of course, pyramids are very big. New Age practitioners believe that the shape of the pyramids is a potent energy force, and so this would be, this is a setup where you can sort of concentrate the cosmic forces while you sit on this bed underneath this pyramid. Okay, so you heard from Aaron that there's lots of different themes in Egyptian literature, especially curses of the pharaoh, curses of mummies. But we'll look at a couple of these different themes. So there's romances that are set in ancient Egypt. Many writers wrote sort of historical fiction set in ancient Egypt. There's the other theme that we'll see that's very, very popular is Egyptians who discovered the secret of immortality, who are alive today around us, curses, and then mummies that were benign and then became more vengeful later on in literature. So one of the earliest, as you heard, was Louisa May Alcott story, but there's even an earlier story by Jane Loudon, The Mummy, A Tale of the 22nd Century. It was a science fiction novel written in 1827, believe it or not, set in the future, where a mummy comes back, and it's sort of a critique of Victorian society at the time. Edgar Allan Poe wrote the story, Some Words with a Mummy, and it's sort of a lot of these tales are sort of, there's an immortal character who brings enlightened knowledge, right? And this was very popular as spiritualism became more of a movement in the United States and elsewhere. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle was very, very influential. He wrote two important mummy stories. One is The Ring of Thoth. In this story, it has many of these different elements, but it's about a immortal Egyptian who's looking for the mummy of his long lost love, in order that he could. She died. She did not have immortality. He wants to find the ring that was on her mummy. That is a special poison where he can actually die and join her in the afterlife. So a very, very interesting story. One that I really like is another one by Conan Doyle called Lot 249. And Lot 249, a kind of vengeful university student, buys a mummy, buys the scroll of life, and then resurrects the mummy in order to seek out revenge on other students at the university that he hates. And of course, this kind of backfires a little bit in the end, but this is sort of a theme that you see a lot in mummy fiction and also mummy movies. Bram Stoker, who wrote Dracula, also wrote a mummy story, The Jewel of the Seven Stars, and this is sort of about a evil queen who becomes resurrected, and again, it's used in a lot of the mummy films. H. Rider Haggard, who wrote King Solomon's Mines, wrote one called Smith and the Pharaohs, where this Egyptologist falls in love with basically a perfectly preserved woman, and it all ends in disaster. So some people think that this sort of vengeful mummy and a depiction of mummies in literature might reflect kind of a view on colonialism and imperialism, and maybe even sort of a guilt about colonialism and imperialism, that we sort of, some people feel at the time that colonialism had some very negative consequences, and they felt that there were going to be negative repercussions on Europe and other countries, within Europe, and that there was sort of this rightful vengeance of the East on the West. So a parallel in North America, some people believe, is the Indian burial ground curse myth, which you see in several movies, right? Poltergeist, right? The house is built on a Native American burial ground. There are several others, right, where there's a curse because it was built on the Native American burial ground, and it might sort of reflect that guilt of colonialism. Right? So it sort of shows a complex relationship between East and West. Right, the West, or sometimes sort of East and West. The West is a monster. The East is a monster, typified by the mummy, and it's a victory over, let's say, the East. Sometimes it's expressing, sort of guilt over colonialism and maybe even agency of the colonized. A lot of this comes into play with popular press during the discovery of King Tut. King Tut was found, Tutankhamun, by Howard Carter, who was, an archaeologist working in the area for many, many years, who was looking specifically for Tut's tomb in the Valley of the Kings, because many other pharaohs' tombs had been identified, but not King Tut. He was convinced that it was still there. He had the financial backing of Lord Carnarvon. Lord Carnarvon was of poor health, and his doctor advised him to go to someplace warm. He went to Egypt. He needed something to do there, and he decided to basically work in archaeology. He became the financial backer for Howard Carter and funded the expedition. In 1922, Howard Carter telegraphed to Lord Carnarvon and told him, "We have made a wonderful discovery in the valley, magnificent tomb, seals intact, recovered, same for your arrival, congratulations." That after 6 years of hard work, they found steps going down to a sealed door. He waited patiently while Lord Carnarvon came from England. The reason why the tomb was never looted like all of the other tombs was because King Tut died at a very early age. His tomb was not ready. So they had to turn a tomb that was ready into his tomb very quickly. This tomb was pretty small. As soon as they buried King Tut, they started work on other projects, and the entrance got buried quickly. And then right above it is, you can see the tomb of Ramses the Seventh, and a lot of that debris, again, continued to bury the entrance, and so it was buried under a lot of rubble and forgotten in antiquity. I have a short clip from a BBC series that shows the moment when they entered the tomb, and it was really a remarkable experience. So I want you to watch that. And if you're interested, I am posting on our playlist the two-part series that the BBC did on Tutankhamun. I think it's a really wonderful series. You may not get a chance to watch it now. Obviously, you're all busy finishing up, but who knows? Maybe maybe one day, if you're bored with Tiger King, you'll watch this. They did two other episodes in the series on Champollion, decipherment of hieroglyphs, and one on Belzoni and the discovery of Abu Simbel. But this one on King Tut is excellent, and the others are good too, and I would recommend those. But